Hey, friends, welcome to the first episode of Living Undivided. I'm your host, Chuck Mingo, and I am founder of a racial solidarity movement called Undivided. There's no denying it, and it's especially true this year. Conversations around race tend to get intensely heated, shameful. It's this hushed thing, or we're like blaring with bullhorns at each other. And it just seems like it's a hard place to find bridges. But since 2015, Undivided has been a place where people have gotten beyond the noise, gotten into relationship with people across racial lines to have conversations based on understanding and empathy, a shared learning of each other's stories, and actually taking action to live life undivided. Through the movement, thousands of participants have been catalyzed into action, doing all kinds of things. And one of the things that I love about Undivided is the kind of relationships that birth out of it. So each week on this show, you're going to hear about different guests who are living undivided. Some people are doing that in their vocation. Others are doing that through books that they've written. But where we're going to start today is with two friends of mine who are doing it day in and day out in their interpersonal relationships with each other and with their family. And not only are they doing the work of living undivided with each other, but they're bringing justice and unity into the world through things that they're involved in. And so I'm encouraged for you to meet them, because our goal every week on this show is that you too would find ways to live undivided right where you are, step into the tension, bring grace and hope and healing right where you are. And with that in mind, we're going to hear from my friends today, Mario, Stuckey, and Brian Dershaw. So welcome them to the show. Hey, Mario, Brian, so good to have you guys here and to have you on Living Undivided. Thanks for saying yes to this.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. This is awesome.
Oh, so good to see you guys. So let's do this. We're going to start a little bit different. Rather than you introduce yourselves, since this is about your friendship, we're going to have you introduce the other person. So Brian, tell us a little bit about Mario.
So let's see, Mario. I'll give this to Mario as a father, a husband. To me, most importantly, a friend. You know, he's probably the kindest person I've met, who just opens up with warmth. First guy that, first friendship where right away it's like, hey, we're going to be truth to each other. You know, we're going to tell each other all of our faults and flaws, make sure we've got somebody to go with. But, most importantly, since this is church related, I'd say he's a follower of Christ. We'll add that in. But, the luckiest people probably for Mario are, his wife, Ryan, his daughters, Kennedy, Madison, and Taylor, to have him as a dad. And I think that, the church has got to be lucky to have him as a member. And I'm certainly lucky to have him as a friend. I suppose I'll throw in work too. He's a national sales for Spectrum, so he's got that going on as well.
I love it, Brian. That's a great introduction. Mario, you get to return the favor. Tell us about Brian.
And Brian, I'll give you your $100 later. That was pretty awesome. I didn't know it was about me, but Brian's just an awesome guy. He's, of course, is a great father to his two kids, Nate and Nora, and awesome husband to Michelle. And I've come to really love Brian because his vulnerability, his openness, and just really being there. He's consistent and always there, and just someone that a sounding board that I can bounce things off of. And I think the one thing that I value most in our relationship is there's no ego or pride. So we're allowed to be weak and show our weak moments and be vulnerable, which is, one of those things for me as a Black man is sometimes uncommon, because we have to show this rough exterior of, we can push through. And truly, Brian allowed me to let my guard down to where, as he mentioned, to allow my flaws and my weak points to be out there, and there's no judgment. So I look at him more than a friend. He's like a brother. And that's one of the things that I value most.
Man, you guys, so awesome to hear two men have the kind of friendship that you have. And I hear it, and I hear warmth, and I hear commitment to each other, and a solidarity that has been forged. So obviously we're looking at your journey now a few years into it, but let's start with your before story. So tell us, how did you guys meet? Give context for that.
You want me to go, Mario?
Undivided.
Yeah.
Undivided brought us together. Luckily, we were paired, and I always give credit where credit is due. Lynn Watts had paired us, and it was really the irony of the things that we had in common. Our birthdays are the same day. We worked at the same stores, our first jobs, and just some of the things. Our kids are almost the same age, other than my youngest. And those things really just brought this connection right off the bat. And then we had these moments, just moments of breakthrough, where we showed ourselves, and I guess you can say we were naked with ourselves from a vulnerable standpoint, that really kind of like tore all the walls down. But Brian, if you got something to add to that, that was my perspective.
Brian, here, I'd love to ask you, Brian, though, did you hit it, like, was it an immediate connection, or how was that? Did it evolve over time?
No, I think it was immediate. I mean, just to give even a little more background on it, Mario had been through Undivided. I signed up as a facilitator and was declined once, had not gone through the program. And then the next time, and we just got an email saying, you two are together. And I remember the morning that we met, at a coffee shop in between our houses. It was just an immediate connection. And there were the weird things. We didn't discover the birthday until a few weeks later. And then it happened a couple weeks later, but we knocked out of the, right away that we're both from families of 6. He's number 6, I'm number 5.
Okay.
It's you walk down this, and as we were talking, it's almost like you're looking at somebody and say, we certainly have many differences in our lives, but so many similarities, just drew immediate rapport. And honestly, the day that we went through our Undivided training, we met in advance of that. So we at least knew who each other would be when we walked into the room. Right. And then we walked into the room and had this, half a day long training where, as we sat there, and I always point to sort of the step to the center game. The two of us kept stepping out to the center. And then when we didn't, one of us did or the other didn't, we wondered why. Because like we have everything in common. We kind of felt like sometimes some of the bad kids in the corner, because we were stepping out on things we probably other people we were stepping out on.
Right. Well, it's so cool to hear you guys talk about that. So, for those who don't know, Undivided is a 6-week experience where people get paired up as facilitators, but then there are 6 to 8 other people in a group having a frank conversation about race. The first week we talk about history, and we talk specifically in the Cincinnati-based group about the Cincinnati history around race. And there's some tough parts and tough chapters of that history, leaning into skills like empathy. We talk about the systems and structures that oftentimes create the disparity, and, digging into spiritual principles like repentance, this idea of, going a new direction. And so these aren't easy conversations. And so you guys found yourselves really with a friendship that was forged through a powerful conversation. I certainly believe a life-changing conversation, but one that is not easy. So tell me about maybe what were some of the tough moments for the two of you, or things you had to navigate either in Undivided initially or as you've continued to journey on race in your relationship?
You want to go, Brian?
Sure. Navigate with each other, or I'll start with, what we had to navigate in our journey through Undivided. And then I'll hit on maybe a couple, personal or at least generalities.
That'd be great. Yeah.
As it related to Undivided, we both played our role as facilitators, and found our role pretty naturally. I'm more of a timekeeper, and keeping people on task. Mario certainly is somebody who helps generate more rapport amongst the group. But, one of the struggles, I don't know, for those who haven't gone through Undivided, there seems to be a preconceived notion for many who come into it. And this is one area that Mario and I think by getting to know each other before helped. And that is if you're white and coming into it, you're looking at the people of color to answer for their entire races. And if you're a person of color, you're looking at the white person to say, hey, my bad. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to do that. It wasn't me, but I see how you could look at me as being that person. And so that was something, just the way that we interacted with each other, because I remember one of our participants called it like the dumb questions that would come up. But, that was a struggle, is then to help guide, because you could something could get derailed fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Then personally, it's one of those, if you look back on your friendships, and so without, getting super personal, friendships build over time, but you probably could think of some of your closest friendships and realize that those people only know, let's say, 70% of you.
Yeah.
That everybody's got that they hold back. And I don't know if it was just the raw emotional experience of Undivided and, coming to terms with things you've said, things you've done, things you haven't said or done, that Mario and I, we just immediately started, being vulnerable with one another, where in the world, that's what you hope for. But to this day, in the pandemic, we've gotten together a few times, in a park at a distance to get together. But besides calls and texts and all that, but it's really to get together and say, hey, what do you have going on?
Yeah.
That's hard for you. And it's, I think, changed now. Let Mario go. I think it's changed our perspectives on so many things, just to see, the things that we didn't expect that we'd be going through in life, but having somebody there, or things that person might not have expected to hear anybody ever tell them. And how do you react to that? But,
Do you have any examples of that? Like things that you didn't think you'd be going through in your friendship, or things that the other said to you that you just like, man, I never thought I'd hear that from a friend.
You want to go, Mario? Or?
Yeah, there's a couple moments where you never anticipate someone being that real and honest. And I'll never forget, we were in the parking lot, and this is literally the first few weeks in, and he said, I have something to share with you that's deep and personal, and I want to let you know that. And it was that moment where it was, I've heard you say it, Chuck, that Kairos moment where it was like, wow, it opened the doors for me to say, okay. And at that moment, after he shared with me, it was immediate for me to say, I love you. Because for someone to share something so deep and so personal, I feel gracious. My gratitude towards someone opening up and sharing that changed my perspective. And then there's also life things that happen where it's changed my view and changed my stance on how do I perceive the world and how do I perceive people. I can tell you from my own experience coming into Undivided was when you first made the announcement that, hey, we're going to start this Undivided program. I really felt that, oh, this is a great opportunity. God's, tugging at my heart because I can share my experience and my experience of living in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and, all my friends or family are Black, and then moving to Pittsburgh, and literally there was 5 people in the school that were Black, and one was my brother. So looking at that, I said, I have this great dichotomy of 2 lifestyles where I've learned how to navigate through both. And I thought this was my chance to kind of spill that out to everyone in the Undivided. But really, when I can't remember if it was you or it was Lynn who said, it's not about you going in Undivided, changing someone. It's about you changing yourself and looking at yourself. And, from a biblical principle of examining oneself. And I really had to do that. And I think that was the biggest takeaway for me, is it changed my perspective overall, not just with my friendship with Brian, but going through the different topics each week, whether it was empathy, and it was repentance. I think the biggest thing for me was repentance, because there was moments, and I still struggle with, where, just listening to the news and, there's a crime that happened and they don't identify the person. And I kind of like, please, God, don't let it be a Black man that, committed this crime. And I had to really take a step back. Like, that's not the godly way to look at anything. That's not the godly way to view that, and change my stance on that, and really say, I hope that whoever the victim is or whatever the crime is that they're able to change and be better for it.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I love what you're talking about there. And it just illustrates that your friendship has become very much a spiritual friendship. And so I know one of the powerful moments that you guys shared, and I think we actually have a picture of it, is you two hugging after you, Brian, got baptized. So Brian, tell us what this moment reflects to you as you look back on it now.
Oh, I mean, that's one of those moments I'll never forget. I mean, pure joy. To lead up to that, I grew up in the Catholic Church, so was baptized before I knew what baptism meant, before I knew really what anything meant. And was still relatively then probably just a couple years into coming to the church, getting to know things. And it was one of those that honestly, probably a few months before, Mario and I were approached to work the baptism, to be the dunker, as I call him, which Chuck, you might have asked him to double dunk me. You remember that. But so I had never really thought about baptism at that point. I was going along sort of on my path. This was new to me. And I almost said, yeah, I'll go do that. And then the person confirmed, like, well, you've been baptized, right? I was like, well, when I was an infant. And she said, no, you're not eligible. So that really got me thinking. And then Mario started pressuring me. Not really. He started asking the question. But over time, I continued along and said, I want to do this. Like, I do want to stand up and do this. A little nerve-wracking to do it in front of a large group of people in a giant warm bathtub. But, to get in there just the whole day, to wake up, with my wife and kids, that they came along, that they're there, and then to walk out. And I think, totally unintentionally, was one of the first few people on the stage just by virtue of, I think, where we were sitting when called to the stage. And, knew that Mario was going to be there. And, he walks me out, and it's like, in that moment, it was, I don't know, bliss, joy, whatever, relief, all of those things. And then when I walked away, I don't know, you guys have gone through some of these experiences, but then all of a sudden you're alone. It's like you go through it, I get out, and there's Mario, there's the hug. And not only did we get captured on camera, I later learned from a whole bunch of people who light me up by text that we're on the big screen. But in that moment, like, I'm not alone as I'm walking out. Like, I'm in the joy of that. And then all of a sudden I've got that to live, for as long as I've got that photo.
That's right. That lived experience.
Well, guys, that's a moment. I was just going to say, that's a moment that I'll never forget, because not only did I get the opportunity to baptize one of my best friends, and who's someone I consider to be a brother, my daughter was also baptized shortly thereafter. So this was just an exhilarating experience, and I couldn't stop from crying. It was tears of joy. And I grew up in a small Baptist church where it was just the pastor baptizing you. So for me to do it, it was all these emotions just kind of flooded to the surface. And I think that picture, besides like my meathead, captured that pretty well.
I love it, man. I love it. And so I want to hit you guys with some lightning round questions in a moment, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you both to reflect on what your friendship has meant to you in this year, 2020, pandemic, racial reckoning in our country. Your relationship, I'm imagining, has been a place for you to engage and explore what all of this stuff means. So just talk a little bit, both of you. Maybe we'll start with you, Mario. What's it meant to be Brian's friend in 2020 to you?
It's meant to be very deep and personal, but I think the real thing is it's a place of refuge from a personal perspective of being able to connect with someone outside of my wife or kids and, immediate family. But the moments that, whether it was, spending a few hours in the morning for just drinking coffee at the park or, walking around, just kind of talking through things, it's been a safe place, given that we're in an unsafe environment. Every place that we go, where, you have to have the mask and, you have to wash your hands, but it's been literally and figuratively a safe place for myself, and one that I always, if he says, hey, let's get together, I'm always feeling committed to that, because it's something that I desire to want to be there for him, and I know that he's always there for me, and that's it's been the best part going through this, is still having this deep personal connection when, in time of distancing.
That's good. That's good.
So mine probably leads just prior to the pandemic, which has helped me out tremendously. And I've not said this to Mario. So just prior, our families used to, we would find time, whether it's every other month or monthly, to get the entire family together, to be, an intentional way of the world seeing us interact and our families interact and our children and seeing how that is. And, just before the pandemic, I think literally weeks before the pandemic, Mario and I were having a conversation with some other friends. And, one thing that he said to me, like, I'm always sort of like a planner, and it's like, so an event's got to go off, so if we're getting together, like, everybody better have fun. If we've made the time to do this, everybody better smile, better enjoy themselves, and better, thank God, thank me when they're done, that it was wonderful. And Mario points out to me, I don't even know if there may have been a non sequitur, just like, hey, it's not your responsibility for everybody else to enjoy themselves. You can just enjoy yourself and relax. And he said, you're sometimes different because you're so worried about everybody else out there having fun. So then you get into a pandemic, and it's like, now we're in the house together, and our days are, staring at one another. And since then, I've not gone laissez-faire on it or anything, but I've looked at it and said, look, it's not really my responsibility. I can give people options. I can, but they can also suffer the consequences of choosing something else. But from that, it guided, because I could have gone nuts. Especially if I'm supposed to manage my work schedule, the home schedule, be sure everybody's doing everything, make sure that when we sit down to play a game at night, that we all enjoy it and that we write it in our journals that it's the greatest thing that we've ever done. I looked at it, and I even had this conversation, with my wife now, because she'll make a comment on something. And she probably was farther along in this process than I am, but still has some places where she'd back up into it, but might get agitated with something like, hey, like, if they didn't enjoy it, they didn't enjoy it, but we can enjoy it. Like, let's make sure we enjoy it. So that, and then in the pandemic, it's been the one. I mean, probably I'm still not somebody who gets together with a whole bunch of people, although I'm back at work, and seeing folks. But as soon as it seemed safe, even if it's 6 feet apart, we were out there and finding ways. And I say, sometimes we're just two guys on a walk, through at a park. Just to talk it out. And I even got Mario out on a golf course.
Nice.
Social distance activity. But somebody to make sure, that I connect with both by phone, text, but also in person.
Yeah. It sounds like for both of you, the other has helped lifted some load off of your shoulders at a time when you really need it. And I just think about that as the best picture of friendship, is that, a friend is someone who walks with you, right? They're carrying that load with you. So as we wrap up, I've got some lightning round questions I'm going to ask you guys. I'm going to fire them at both of you. I want both of you to answer each of them, and just in as fewest words as possible. So first question, what's one way that you guys are total opposites? Brian, we'll start with you.
Total opposites. I don't know if I can think of one way that we're total. I guess I'm not an unrelaxed person, but Mario's more relaxed than I am.
Okay. All right. Mario, how about you?
As Brian said, Brian's the planner, and sometimes I just want to fly by the seat of my pants. Let's just have a good time and let the chips fall where they may, and just enjoy ourselves.
I like that. All right. Next question. How are you guys surprisingly the same? So Mario, this time we'll start with you.
We're both very compassionate. I think our compassion for one another, our compassion for our families and the things and the activities that we do. We both coach our girls' basketball teams. Okay. And as we've talked about, I know I told you, Chuck, it's a huge letdown when we lose, and it's a short high when we win. But I think that comes from the passion that we both have, and also being competitive.
That's good. That's good. Brian, how about you? What way would you say you're the same?
We changed ours. Our losses aren't necessarily huge letdowns. They're good learning experiences.
Nice reframe. Nice reframe, Mr. Lawyer.
The wins are fantastic for us, but how are we the same? I mean, the one is, in the world. Now we have many viewpoints that are similar.
Yeah.
But we also can have a conversation where we may not be on the same side, or where we might even want to explore what the opposite side of us is. And, we can take that position and we have that conversation.
Yeah.
It's not an affront to the other person to say, well, this is what so-and-so would think, or this is how this looks, or this is how, and, just that dialogue base. I mean, the curiosity behind it, just to explore and understand, because even our families, it may be that Mario and I are completely the same, but our, parents, brothers, sisters might be totally different than us. And so we'll articulate, at least our understanding of their experience. And that way we get a greater understanding.
That's right. Yeah, I was going to say that's a richness that both of you get to benefit from when you bring that different perspective into your conversation. So you guys met in Undivided, and you're on this show because you are living undivided. So last question for the two of you, well, second to last question for the two of you would be, what's your hope? What's your hope for the future of Undivided, specifically as you think about it in the context of our country? So Brian, let's start with you. Just a couple words of what you would hope for the future.
Well, my hope for the future, but I don't think it's in our lifetimes, is that living undivided is implicit.
Yeah.
But at least for now, my hope is that people, no matter, what side of the fence they're on, it becomes intentional. That people see this. I mean, there's just, it really makes, no sense. Mario's smart enough to stay off of social media. I still monitor it every now and then, but when you look at what people say, do, think, and you think, well, have you ever thought to look across and become undivided with somebody, or ask somebody, how does this impact you, or find out, the empathy, find out places where you felt the same. But ultimately, I'm hoping there's some more intentionality behind it. The people really do come to see one another, as they are, who they are, and find ways together. And then hopefully someday it is just implicit, because, we certainly can value and must value our differences, but, we should move forward together.
That's right. We don't need to be defined by our differences.
Correct.
That's so good. Mario, how about you? What's your hope?
My hope is really that Undivided, as it's changed our community and hopefully changes our country, and that we are truly undivided, that we become that melting pot that we've always inspired to be, and that we can respect our differences, whether that's culturally, racially, respect those, but also there's a value and appreciation and love. I think the baseline of Undivided is that not just the biblical principles, but is based in love. And I hope that we're able to love, one another and just appreciate that, and as I've joked before, I would one day hope to turn on the channel and, that someone has the reality show of Living Undivided, where, we've got 10 strangers from all walks of life living in a house and really kind of reconciling these things that we have that are on the table, that are issues now. We're equal for everyone, and justice for everyone means the same thing. So that's my hope and aspiration for Undivided.
What an amazing picture of the future that both of you drew. Implicit and intentional, a place where everybody's living it out, literally to the point where it would be on TV, it would be on display. And you guys are, I want to tell you, your relationship is where it starts. And so I just want to thank you guys for being with me today, sharing your story. But more importantly, I want to thank you for modeling what it really looks like to be and to live undivided. So thank you, Mario. Thank you, Brian, for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Man, I love their friendship, and I want to see more of those kinds of friendships emerging all over the world. I mean, I think Brian said it, and he's right. There's so many ways in which our social media, I use that word in quotes, is dividing us. But man, there's something powerful when you go into relationship with people who may look different than you, only to find that there's a lot more that unites us than there is that divides us. That's what Living Undivided is all about. I hope you'll join me next week. We're going to be joined by Dr. Hari Hahn. She is with the SNF Agora Institute out of Johns Hopkins University. She does work nationwide on how to build bridges. And she's going to be sharing that work with us because she's been connected to the Undivided movement. So she'll be sharing some insights about the movement that she's seeing, but also her powerful story of being a first-generation immigrant to the country. And so don't miss it. You can always connect with what's going on with Undivided at www.undivided.com. Encourage you to go there, click subscribe so you don't miss any of our updates. And until then, find a way this week to live undivided. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.